The Las Vegas Raiders have fired head coach Antonio Pierce after only one single season as the head coach of the football team, where the Raiders recorded a 4-13 performance, highlighting a 10-game losing streak and 0 wins in the division. This marks another change in the coaching leadership of the Raiders in the past 4 years, after John Gruden left in 2021 and after firing Josh McDaniels in 2023. And now in 2025, Antonio Pierce is another name on that list. And let's be honest, it was definitely a rough season for the Raiders. But at the same time, I don't know how I feel about this whole Antonio Pierce situation. I'm not shocked that they fired Antonio Pierce, but given the fact that he wasn't fired after the game on Sunday and he survived Black Monday, to me, it kind of felt like they were just going to go on and, play out the remainder of his contract, give him another season. But obviously that was not the case. Early today, Mark Davis went in and made the decision to fire Antonio Pierce. And look, it's definitely a tough situation because on one hand, I understand the fact, the people that wanted Antonio Pierce to get fired, I do understand where you're coming from. I do understand the fact that it was just a bad season. Not even just a bad season, a terrible season, I should say. A 4-13 record, 10-game losing streak. And it's not only about the record, it's also about just like the quality of losses, the way the team was playing. There's multiple different games where we lost by 10 or more points. A lot of games, especially early in the season, it really felt like we were just not a competitive football team whatsoever. And just in general, there's so many games where it did feel like, from a coaching standpoint, the Raiders were behind the ball. A lot of games where we were getting out-coached. And ultimately, Antonio Pierce definitely showed his weaknesses as a head coach when it comes to making key decisions, when it comes to in-game moments, whether it is to go for it on 4th down, when it comes to clock management, when it comes to when and when not to throw the challenge flag. And I'm not gonna lie, there definitely were times in the season where I felt like he wasn't taking full accountability, especially when he was talking to the media. There's definitely times where it felt like he threw some players under the bus, especially after last week's loss to the Chargers, where he pointed out that this team has a glaring need, essentially throwing Aiden O'Connell under the bus. So look, I understand where you guys are coming from, the people that wanted Antonio Pierce to get fired. But at the same time, I can't help but mention the fact that Antonio Pierce, to me, it felt like he was put in a position to fail this season, because ultimately, you can say what you want about Antonio Pierce, but I just don't really see any scenario where if you would have brought in any other coach, let's say best case scenario, a Harbaugh would have got here, if the Raiders still would have had the same type of moves that they made in this year's offseason when it comes to addressing the quarterback position and addressing other positions in general, look, it doesn't matter what coach we would have had. I think this still would have been a bad season. And if we're being completely honest, the moment we rolled with Gardner Minshew and with Aiden O'Connell as our quarterback room, essentially the moment we saw that Gardner Minshew and AOC was our quarterbacks, we should have known from the start that it was very likely going to be a long season. And ultimately, I just feel like Mark Davis never fully trusted Antonio Pierce. I don't think he was fully bought into him as a head coach, but I think he just last season, he was in a scenario where he could not ignore the fans and his players twice when it comes to making an important decision when it comes to the head coach. So it almost felt like Mark Davis was forced to give him this job. And it kind of felt like he was like, you know what, I'll give you the job, but I'm going to give you a short leash. I'm going to get this general manager for you. We're going to do this and that. Ultimately, to me, Antonio Pierce never felt the same this season compared to that type of swagger, that type of confidence he had when he was an interim head coach. Now, I don't know exactly why that is. I don't know if it was the pressure of him actually being the full-time head coach now. I don't know if it's due to the fact that, like I said, maybe he was on a short leash. Maybe he felt the uncertainty when it came to the front office believing him. I don't really know what it is, to be honest with you. But what I got to mention is the fact that, to give him only one season when you can tell that the quarterback position is still a problem. Also, taking into consideration all the injuries we had on the defensive side of the football and just in general, it was definitely an unfortunate season for the Raiders. Now, I know that sounds like an excuse, but, it definitely factored in. But, I also understand that injuries happen to every team, and you got to find a way to overcome that. But just, you just cannot deny the fact that the Malcolm Koonce injury was huge to this team. Christian Wilkins getting hurt. Marcus Epps going down early. Jacorian Bennett going down. Just the list goes on and on. And Max Crosby did not look like he was 100% this season. So there's just a lot of shitty circumstances that AP was dealt with this season. And ultimately, I think it just boils down to I'm a fan of giving a head coach at the bare minimum 2 years to see what they truly have. And simply put, if we were able to give Josh McDaniels a second season, even though he had just as many red flags as Antonio Pierce, if not more, they at least gave him that second season. Now, he didn't finish it. He got fired midway through the season. But at the bare minimum, he was given that second offseason. He was given another opportunity. So just based off that fact alone, I would have been okay with us giving Antonio Pierce one more season. And also, one thing that you got to factor into is I don't feel like the coaching landscape is looking great right now for the Raiders. And if we were going to fire Antonio Pierce, I was hoping we were going to do it after the game on Sunday or yesterday. Now, I understand we did fire him only like a day later, but, it's just little things like that. You know that if you're going to fire Antonio Pierce, there's just going to be so much things to get done for this team, because now you're talking about more than likely a new rebuild. We need a new head coach. We're going to need a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator. Just the shakeup of this roster and this coaching staff is going to be a lot to deal with. So at this point, you want as much time as possible. That way you can interview a list of worthy candidates, and that way you can go through a thorough process of hiring the head coach and ultimately building this coaching staff. So it's just the little things when it comes to just the overall operation of the Raiders that always frustrates me. And with Antonio Pierce getting fired, there's just going to be so much uncertainty with the football team as well. I mean, there's just a lot of players that were essentially from that Josh McDaniels / Antonio Pierce regime that, they may be on the outside looking in. We got a lot of players on the defensive side of the football that are due for a contract. Are they going to come back? It really depends, man. Who's going to be our defensive coordinator? What type of scheme are we going to be running? That'll really determine a lot of what players we are going to prioritize when it comes to these contract negotiations. Also, too, Max Crosby. It's a little bit questionable with him. He definitely put out a hint that he wants that contract to be restructured. He wants more guaranteed money, but at the same time, I mean, just look at all the turnover that a guy like Max Crosby has had to deal with in his early career. I hope it's not a situation where he's like, you know what, I'm fed up with this football team, and he ultimately requests a trade. I hope something like that doesn't happen, but just so many different things that are uncertain for us as a football team. Honestly, if I had to guess, I think we're going to go through yet again another rebuild. And the biggest thing that scares me is, to me, there's no clear-cut candidate that just is going to be a huge upgrade over Antonio Pierce. Now, there is speculation that the top targets for the Raiders is going to be a Mike Vrabel and a Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Which, look, Mike Vrabel, I mean, he definitely is an upgrade over Antonio Pierce. I don't know how big of an upgrade he is. And also, too, it seems like reports are indicating that he's a front runner to be the New England Patriots head coach. So there's definitely no guarantee he would get hired as a head coach. And if you miss out on Mike Vrabel, you're going to definitely take a gamble with probably a young offensive coordinator like a Liam Cohen. And the most attractive possibility of being our new head coach is the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. But the biggest thing with Ben Johnson is we still don't know if he's going to leave Detroit. He's probably not going to be taking job interviews during the playoffs. He's going to be locked in trying to win a Super Bowl with Detroit. And there's no guarantee he's going to prioritize the Raiders when it comes to him choosing his next job. If he decides to leave Detroit, he's going to be the front runner for a lot of teams. And at this point, the Raiders not having a quarterback. We're at the number 6 overall pick. I don't know how attractive of a destination we are compared to other teams at this point in time. So it's a little bit scary, man, because things could go south if they can't get one of their top candidates. To me, I would have been totally okay with giving Antonio Pierce one more season. Let him know that it's a make or break year, so he better get aggressive to try to get a quarterback and trying to turn this team around. And worst case scenario, if we had another disappointing season, well, it is what it is. You fire Antonio Pierce at that point, and then you get a new regime. And then guess what? Hopefully we have a high enough draft pick to select one of the top quarterbacks in the 2026 NFL draft class, which looks to be a lot stronger than this year's draft class. Maybe we would be in a position to get like a Archie Manning or a Drew Allar from Penn State. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Antonio Pierce got fired. Like I said, I'm not shocked. The writing was definitely on the wall that he wasn't going to return. And that's exactly what happened. Now, one thing that is worth noting is that this year in the offseason, Tom Brady is now officially a part owner of the Raiders. and he is expected to have a role in the selection process for the new head coach, which could more than likely potentially influence the direction of this team's leadership when it comes to the head coach. So that's something to take into consideration. I mean, at this point, I definitely trust Tom Brady to make football decisions over Mark Davis, who has just shown that he clearly doesn't get it when it comes to these type of moves and when it comes to creating a winning product on the football field. Hopefully Tom Brady could do it for us, but Raider Nation, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Like I said, I definitely see both sides of the coin, but I definitely want to get your guys' feedback. Do you guys think this was the correct decision to fire Antonio Pierce, or do you think he should have been given another season? Let me know in that comment section down below. But with that being said, Raider Nation, that is all I have for you guys in today's video. Anybody that's new to the channel and you guys love Raider related content just like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. That being said, I will see you guys in the next one.